Okay, Apes, this is chapter 4, part 2. We're going to talk about biomes in this section. So, what determines what type of biome you have? It's regarding the precipitation and the climate in that particular area. In that area, you can have organisms that have distinct growth forms and adaptations due to how much water they get and what kind of food they can eat. So temperature and precipitation, that's misspelled, sorry. Those are the two things that are going to affect how organisms develop. And a biome has similar plant growth forms in that area and has a particular temperature and precipitation distribution. So if you look at, on the x-axis, you look at average annual temperature in degrees C, and on the y you look at precipitation. This is for the whole year. This is the average of the whole year. As you would think, the something where you don't have a lot of precipitation, but you have a high temperature, that's going to be a desert. You know that already. Where you have high temperature and tons of precipitation, you're going to have a lot of plants, so that's a rainforest. Okay, so these aren't too hard to figure out. Some of these other ones we might have to start memorizing and thinking about. But the easy ones are the desert, the rainforest. Tundra is where you have super low temperature and not very much precipitation. That would be near the ice, near ice caps and things like that in the north and south, near the poles in the north and south. So those are very, very low temperatures. So at least we can figure out these three, and then we'll have to start learning about the other ones inside. So as you can see, these go in bands because these have particular, we just talked about precipitation and how the air circulation and the ocean circulation affects these things. So these are pretty much in bands like that, and we'll learn where each one is. So let's talk about tundra first. Tundra has a super low temperature, and it has very little growing there. Very, very small lichens and small plants and things like that. They have to wait till the temperature's above zero so they don't freeze, and they have to have the soil be not frozen anymore. So there's not very much growing here because the growing season is really, really short. If we think about how many calories are how many calories worth of plants are in a square meter, there's only 600 kilocalories of food for the animals per square meter per year, which is really, really low. So this is not an area where you're going to have a lot of animals because there's not a lot of plants to support the animals. So most of the time we have a temperature underneath zero, so we can't have a lot growing there. And the precipitation is not that high either. So there's not a lot of precipitation, there's not a lot of time to grow where it's over 0 degrees. So there's not going to be a lot growing in the tundra. Just small little lichens and plants, mosses and things like that can grow there. Boreal forests, there you can find those in Canada and other northern kind of countries like that. And so Europe, Russia, North America, we have boreal forests. And they're mainly evergreens, coniferous trees that can tolerate the cold. They don't lose their leaves, they just lose the needles every once in a while. So their soils don't have a lot of nutrients in them because there's not a lot of leaves that are lost and recycled in the soil. So the soil is very nutrient poor. So on the temperature and precipitation on the boreal forest, you see that there's times when the trees cannot grow, and the precipitation is lower than the average temperature. So there's only going to be growth in this area right here, and there's just enough water for those trees to grow. Temperate rainforests are in Northern California, like in Humboldt and along the coast, and up in Northern California, all the way up to Alaska. So there's lots of trees growing there. The ocean's allowing the temperature to be in a good range for those trees. These areas have almost 12-month growing seasons, because the winters are rainy and the summers have lots of fog. So redwood trees like that. They like the fog. They can get a lot of moisture from the fog. So it's a temperate rainforest. So if you look at the precipitation and the temperature, you notice they're all above zero. You got good temperatures in the summer, and you have enough precipitation for those trees to grow. These the temperate seasonal rainforest are found in lots of different areas, and I think in the book they have an example of Germany for the temperature and precipitation graph. In these areas, we don't have the coniferous forests anymore. We have deciduous trees, such as oak and beech, and these drop their leaves right before freezing, so that the soil is going to be much richer than the places we've talked about so far. And there's lots of rain here. They have, a meter full of rain every year. That's a lot of rain. And here's the one in Stuttgart. So think of like the Black Forest. You've heard of that maybe before. If you've gone down south, Southern California, SoCal, they have shrubland, woodland, shrubland areas where there's just really small trees and shrubs. They have sagebrush and yucca plants and things like that. And it's pretty hot and dry in the summer. And they have a mild rainy mild and rainy winter. Everything can grow for all year long, but the higher the temperature, the more the plants are going to grow. Wildfires are common, and the plants that live in there are adapted to wildfires. And after, some plants need fire for them to propagate, to have seeds that burst and things like that, for them they are adapted to the wildfires and they need it. So woodland, shrubland, you see the temperatures are higher than we've been seeing in the other ones, and there's precipitation in the winter months, not in the summer months. Now we have temperate grassland, cold desert. So this would be areas like in the Great Plains of the United States, in Oklahoma, Wyoming, things like that. This is a temperate grassland. These have beautiful soils because the plant that likes to live here is grass, and the grass dies off and makes beautiful humus-filled soil. So these are great growing areas. So man takes these over and uses them for growing wheat and all the different grains and cropland. So this becomes great farmland. And looking at the temperature, you have temperatures never get to get close to zero, but not really that cold. And you have precipitation that looks like is pretty much consistent all year round. So grasses are going to love that. They can be watered all the time. Tropical rainforests are the most diverse areas, one of the most diverse areas in the planet. You have a multitude of different types of different species, so it's extremely rich in species diversity. The temperatures are high. I'm trying to find my page for this one, but oh, here we go. This is on page 105. So these are in Central America, near the equator, close to 20 degrees north and south of the equator, and you'll find those in Central and South America, Australia, Asia, and things like that. The precipitation occurs frequently. It's warm and wet, and little temperature variation, so it's pretty much the same temperature all the time. And this place is amazing. It has more biodiversity than any other terrestrial biome. Let me give you the darn it, I don't have the calories per acre, but this area has tons of food for everybody who wants to live there. And you can see the temperature and precipitation are high in this area. So in Central America, Atlantic coast of South America, and different areas, sub-Saharan Africa, we have seasonal forests and savannas. Savannas mean lots of grassland, and then we also have some trees there. It's a pretty fertile area, and it can be farmed. But we have trouble here because we don't have enough precipitation, we don't have enough rain. So we have grasses and some trees in this area. So you see it doesn't really get to zero. You have zero rain here and here, so this is going to be a growing season right there. Desert, Mojave Desert, Sahara Desert, all those big giant deserts you've heard of, have really, really interesting plants. Like in the United States we have cacti, but in other areas of the world they have these type of plants that actually look a lot like cacti, but they've modified themselves so that they can have spines on their spines instead of leaves, so they don't evaporate the small amount of water that they can get. They have waxy coatings on their plant parts so they don't lose water, and the design of their shape reduces the amount of evaporation that they can have from their plants. So they're not going to have thin leaves, they're going to have big giant body parts, plant parts, and then very, very thin spines, which are the leaves that they've modified themselves to become like that. So these are, well, in the high area, there's no freezing going on here. So that's the end of the different biomes. We'll talk about those more in class, but that's just a brief overview of those. Thanks guys, we'll talk later in the rest of chapter 4. Bye now.